Hi there.
Hello, everyone.
Tapping into last week's conversation where we spoke about discernment, making decisions, and so on, we had our own conversation in the course of this past week around an issue that we've often encountered not only in other people, but we detect it from time to time in ourselves as well, uh, to different degrees. And that is the whole issue of a victim mentality and the effect that has on decisions and life in general.
Yeah, and in discernment of, especially when you are faced with important decisions.
Mm.
I think, and maybe just to touch on uh, the whole subject of how everything is interlinked.
Mm.
How
Mm.
last week's discussion flows into this, and how everything seems to be woven like a piece of fabric, so that everything,
Or a spider
like a
web.
spider web, if you touch it here, it stirs there, and yeah, we often say we feel that we should get more tools to give you, but we often come back to things that just always seems to be the things that help in life situations.
Mm.
So
And we don't want to get ahead of ourselves because we'll touch on that when we get to coping mechanisms or uh, coping strategies to help us in such a situation. But actually, if you look at it, by by changing certain basic things, small changes, it can make a huge difference. But often we shy away from the small changes because it requires some degree of discipline and a change of patterns.
and mindset, and I think we are very set in our minds.
Yes.
And I think when it comes to victim mentality, we have to say that it usually stems from real trauma
Yes.
and real hardships, often as children, and that it becomes a pattern, a way of seeing life, as somebody that is unable to and helpless in situations. So it is not just a poor me way of looking at life. It usually comes from somewhere where there was real situations where you were the victim and where you could not help yourself or protect yourself.
Because it might be that you were a child at that stage, not knowing what your resources are
Yeah.
or unable to tap into that. And what often happens with any trauma is that we develop certain coping mechanisms, but those coping mechanisms don't help us because we regress to that age when the trauma happened.
Yeah, so when a trigger falls, you go back to being 9 years old and being humiliated or
And being
what happened,
incapable of doing
and
anything.
not being able or nobody there to help you. So it absolutely becomes your way of looking at life. You see life negatively. You're always on the lookout for negative things, for people to be nasty with you or to look down on you. It's as if you have these senses out.
Mm.
You don't feel that life means it well with you, generally. So you're constantly scanning to see what can go wrong, who doesn't mean it well. So it's a very negative pattern of thinking, which also makes it very difficult for you to see open doors, open
Yes.
avenues, because you are not looking at the positives, you are looking at the negatives.
Yeah, and we touch on it on following on last week's discussion because a victim mentality makes it very difficult to make meaningful decisions.
Yeah. How would you say does it influence the way that you make choices?
Well, victim mentality at almost at core values says, I don't have a choice.
Yes, I can't make a choice. There is no choice. I
Yeah.
have to do what.
I have to cope with a hand being dealt to me.
Yes, yes,
Um,
yeah,
I have to make the best out of what I have or whatever. I don't have a choice. And you often hear that in the way we speak, in the vocabulary. Our words often, well, it has to, it reflects what we are thinking.
mm, mm,
And often we'll say, I don't have a choice.
mm.
But was it in that television series Suits where Harvey often said, we always have a choice.
Yeah,
We always have a choice. But with victim mentality, we start with a premise that we don't have.
yes, yes, yeah,
We have to cope with life as it is served to us.
yeah. And in being in that type of mentality, it has so many sides that you can actually also use it as a weapon.
Yes.
So, and you often will see that with parents or a mother making her children feel guilty because she's been through such a hard time raising them, and so there's a guilt-inducing a way of talking to them. To make, because they believe, the person with the victim mentality believes that if somebody can feel guilty towards me, then I will get some sympathy, I will get some help. I can't get it in any other way because I'm a victim. So it becomes a tool, it becomes a weapon. And it also can be a very easy cop-out to taking responsibility of your life. So it has all these faces, and I think that's also very important to say that we are not here suggesting that if you are really in a situation in your life where you are the victim,
in whatever form, whether it's in a work situation,
work situation, where you are actually
exploited,
and you do not know how to get yourself out of this. This is not a mentality. This is a real life situation where you might need help to get you out of that. And I think we need to make that distinction, that we are not talking about that type of situation where you might have become so victimized that you cannot actually see a way out and that you desperately need help. And that would not be a victim mentality. That would be very courageous to find help to get you out of that type of situation. So that is not what we're addressing here. It's more where we start to look at life through lenses that just shows the negative, and that sort of renders us totally immobile, almost cutting off our hands.
and passive.
And making us passive. We cannot do anything to better our lives.
And that ties in, again, this whole issue of stirring here and moving things there and so on. Passive, becoming passive, that throwing out hints and making people feel guilty, that's also being passive aggressive.
Yes. Yes.
Because you're trying to influence it in that way, but you do it out of a position of passive, being
passivity.
From that position. And it's also somehow a probe being put out to say, how much do they care about me?
Yes.
Because if I can make them feel guilty and they start reacting to what I'm saying, then I know that they care for me.
Yeah.
Or so it's this whole thing. It influences our relationships and the way we speak.
And the energy that you, because I think we all know people that are very typical victims. They see themselves as victims. And it is such a negative space to be in that people actually avoid those people.
Yeah.
Because it's very, very what's the word? Being busy with yourself.
Self-absorbed.
Self-absorbed. It's very difficult for people that they see themselves as victims to actually be there for other people, because they are constantly busy with their own inner turmoil and their own being abused, misused, taken advantage of. So, and I think we really need to look at the way that we talk. Like you said, our words are important. What we put out, the way that we talk about life in general. Is it negative? Is it positive? Do we see the silver lining, or are we just seeing the storm clouds? Because in decision making, that is so important. Because if you focus on the negative, we often say we're just being realistic. But often it helps to just see what is possible, and then to start looking at what needs to change in order for something to happen.
Yeah.
And not just to focus. So what would be good tools to help us out of that type of mentality?
In answering that, we have said to each other that you might get to a point where you say,
we know how this talk is going to end.
Can you offer new products? Do you have a wider range? Any new stock on your shelves? The fact of the matter is, certain basic things work through all situations.
And I think it also has to do with if that is built into your life, it opens up the space for your mindset to change.
Yes.
So it does form the basis of living a more fulfilling, more healthy, more positive life.
Yeah. And it boils down to the fact that often we neglect the basics.
Okay, tell us about it.
The first thing is, wait for it, it's not new. Have a practice. Have a practice, whether it's silence, whether it's walking, meditative walking, meditation, centering prayer, a practice where you focus on the here and the now, and which helps you to tap into the big narrative where God is active and we part of this bigger conversation, a part of a universe that means it well with us. A benevolent universe. Yeah. It's so important to have that, because it stabilizes us. It brings us back into our own self. And it helps in coping with so many of the issues that we struggle with.
I think what it also does is it gives us a basis from where we know that we can trust our deepest self.
Yes.
And that we can, if we can decide the choices that we make are made because we feel that that will be the best for me, not out of desperation, not out of any other place of lack, then it will also be the best for everyone around me.
Yes.
And for the universe in general.
Yes.
And that is something that I've had to really hang on to in my life. To really believe that things will work out for the best if I truly choose what I believe to be best for me. Whether it's a job, whether it's moving somewhere, whatever it might be. And then also, of course, the basics of being good to yourself.
Mm, 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 mm.
Because to change a mindset of, I think often we see the world as being really out to get us, but we are often the ones that are treating ourselves the most badly.
Yes, and the world takes its cue from us.
Yes, definitely.
So we have to be good. Just something I think that's important around the practice. It also changes our operating system.
Yes, exactly.
So there's new paths being laid, brain paths. It changes our thinking. On a physiological level, it helps us with that. And then that ties into being good to yourself, taking care of yourself. Um, um, and also realizing that by changing back to the web, by changing things here and speaking to that, it has an influence there. When we work on something here that is a problem and we go about it in a mature, caring way,
And with the intention, I think, of truly changing our mindset.
that's it. Then we're focusing on this issue, in this case, victim mentality. We also investing in addressing other issues. Because what is going to help us here will help in terms of other issues as well. So by focusing here, we are actually taking care of a whole part of our lives. It has an effect. So being good for yourself. And that can be, we started off with victim mentality. But looking at your diet, looking at exercises, looking at your sleep patterns,
inviting a bit of play into your life.
All of that.
Yeah. I think also a very important thing is to build on your, not only look at the negative, the places where trauma happened and where you've been a victim and constantly going back to that, but to look at the things that you actually survived in life, the things that you managed, the things, the times that you were really courageous, where you climbed the mountain. So don't just go into the hole all the time, but also build up that whole image in your mind of the things that you actually accomplished.
Yeah.
Because and where you were not behaving or where you were not functioning from a place of victimhood.
Yeah.
And go back to those things when you become aware that you are falling back into the trap of feeling like a victim.
Yes. And realizing that you have the capabilities to initiate change. It's within your grasp, because victim mentality often creates success amnesia. We don't remember what we've achieved. And we need to be reminded. So in terms of that, and also it's not easy. This can be, it took a long time to develop victim mentality, and it's going to take a while to change that. So to be patient in terms of that. And if it is really difficult and you need help, to talk to somebody, whether it's a therapist, a spiritual director, a good friend, to help you with that. I think that is important. Yeah.
A whole mouthful.
Yes. Thank you so much. We enjoy the conversations, and we enjoy the conversations flowing out of the conversations. And we love hearing from you, as we always say. But have a lovely week.
Goodbye, everyone.